Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Hornstein. Welcome to the No Not Crazy podcast, where we explore the invalidating messages we internalize, their effects on our lives, and the ways we can free ourselves from them. We've all had those experiences that make us question ourselves and even sometimes feel a little crazy. Let's stop accepting the idea that there is something inherently wrong with us and begin to appreciate that actually there is something fundamentally right. So join me, and together we can all feel a little less crazy. I have Dr. Anancia Stafford with me today. This is going to be good. She is warm, smart, and not messing around when it comes to self-accountability and taking charge of changing our own lives. Dr. Anancia Stafford received her bachelor's degree in psychology, her master's degree in clinical mental health, and holds a doctorate degree in counselor's education and supervision. She is a licensed professional clinical counselor, an adjunct professor in the counseling department at DePaul University, and the CEO of the mental health private practice Inner Pieces Counseling and Consulting, LLC in Chicago, Illinois. She is also the author of It's Time to Get on Track, Mood and Behavior Tracker. Having extensive clinical experience with a wide range of populations and mental health conditions, Dr. Stafford currently focuses on self-esteem, codependency, depression, anxiety, and self-accountability in adults and adolescents. Welcome, Anancia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. When I first heard you speak, I was like, I need to talk to her. I just love your energy and the clarity that you bring to the topic of self-validation and taking charge of your own life. So we have an hour and you're going to just straighten us out, right?
Sure.
Seriously, so many people are really stuck in lives they're not happy with, and they just can't see a way out, or they know what they have to do, but they can't quite bring themselves into taking the steps they need to.
Absolutely. A lot of times we start to kind of envision what it is that we want. We want to be happier. We want to be whatever it is, put the ER at the end, better. But we don't take the time to look at actually what it is that we're doing that is contributing to our current situation. Or, what are the circumstances creating for us? What kind of experience is it giving to us? Because it's scary, it's painful. Once we see what's actually laid out there, then we have to think about, now what do I have to do to get all of this stuff out of my way? Mm-hmm. And that can cause people to run into self-doubt, just really not knowing what to do because they don't have any direction. And for the most part, usually starting to change requires stopping doing a lot of the things that are actually happening. The first step of starting change is stopping doing the things that are getting in your way. And so slowing down and really taking inventory and practicing self-awareness. Where are you? What's your mind's environment like? How are you talking to yourself? What's your relationship with yourself like? The relationship with the people around you and your occupation. There's tons of things to take inventory of, but we have to slow down and really just be in the moment and take inventory of what's happening. Before we can make any changes or figure out what it is that you specifically need, we have to see, where there might be some lack or there might be some cycles that are keeping you there in the first place.
So how do you get to that? I mean, because there's so many layers, right? Of why people are in those places. So how do you begin to really honestly look at that, right? Because I think a lot of people, maybe they think they have what they want, or they think they know what they want, but something's still off and it doesn't feel right, but they can't quite get to what it really is. So how do you get honest with yourself? Like, okay, come on.
My favorite thing to do is to just why yourself. Just ask yourself why until you get down to the bare minimum, till you can't go anymore. And for example, if you're saying something like, well, I'm so unhappy here at my job. Okay, why? Well, because the boss isn't paying attention to me, or I don't get along with the coworkers, or the job just it doesn't suit my passions, or whatever the case. Okay, why? Well, because I'm actually passionate about something else. Okay, so now we're at a piece where we're saying, I'm not in alignment with my job, and now I'm unhappy, but I have this other passion that isn't being paid attention to. Well, why aren't you doing that? And then we get a whole nother realm of whys to go down, go down a rabbit hole. What we tend to do is we tend to protect the things that we're familiar with unconsciously. Well, I've got to do this because I'm too old now to go another direction toward my passion, or I can't do this anymore. And when you create those why statements, those why questions, you kind of disarm these excuses that you're making. I'm not at work at this job that I hate because I have to. I'm actually here because I think that I'm too old to do what I'm actually passionate about. Ooh, you know. And as
Mm-hmm.
we were saying before, I think that a lot of people don't really sit down and question why they're involved in these circumstances that they're uncomfortable in, because they're afraid of what the answer is going to be. And quite frankly, sometimes the answer is scary. Sometimes the answer is painful, but that unwillingness to feel these difficult emotions, to get to your clarity, to get to some kind of movement, is what often keeps people stuck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes people don't believe that it could be possible, right? I have a passion for this instead of this. But there's that fear too that if they go after it, it may not work out the way they want. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
they may
I think
stay.
a lot of people internalize other people's invalidation. If someone says, oh, those professions don't, and I'm just going with the career example, those professions don't make that much money, or you've got to be this age, or you've got to look like this, or sound like that. People internalize these messages that they get from society, and they can get these messages from family, from friends, and things like that, directly or indirectly, and they make that their truth. When we start to make these external perspectives and judgments our truth, we rob ourselves of the space to even determine how we truly feel about if we can do it or not, if we want
Mm-hmm.
to do it or not, you know? And self-validation comes from turning down the noise from the external, and really asking yourself that why, really asking yourself about your own values and how you feel about it. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to have some doubts. That's normal. Bravery and courage need fear in their definition, right? They
Mm-hmm.
have to happen with a little fear there. That's the only way you can be those things in the first
Mm-hmm.
place. So when you mentioned the belief part, it's all about your belief systems. But if you don't know what belief systems you're operating on in your subconscious and your unconscious, then you're going to be like, no, this is reality. I really can't do it. And nobody can tell you anything different until you're ready to really challenge your core beliefs.
Right. Right. That's so much of what we believe about what creates our self-worth comes
Mhm.
from those messages. So there's the why. We ask the why questions, and then we get to that point where we realize, oh, okay. You know? um like, yeah, so I can't use that excuse anymore.
Mhm.
Right. And that's really, not what this is about. And maybe it becomes more clear what would make you happier.
Yeah.
Right. What is more in alignment with who you are or what you want, or all of those things. So then, but then what? Right. Because people hit that resistance.
Oh,
They keep going, but I can't. I will maybe come back to me next week, next month. um yeah, so like there's that threshold, right? They have to push
yeah.
past.
You know, I'm guilty of this at times too. So, it's something that requires constant self-love, constant self-care. When you get to that raw space where it's just you and your truth, and it's kind of brutal, sometimes it can be a relief to really come to your truth. Now what? Some things that I like to do with my clients is I then have them visualize an ideal self. If no one else had, any influence over your life to the best of your abilities, imagine what life would be like for you. What would be that career? How would you feel in a relationship? How would you feel with friends or family? When you looked in the mirror, what would you be saying to yourself? Mm. And really have them create that as a real character. And then we look at where they're at now and kind of map out, well, what would be required for you to acquire these things? What's the barriers? What are the supports that can help you get there? So it's all about like really starting to get clear with, now you've got your raw truth, your raw values, and using those to create, at least in your mind, a visualization and then a plan to get there. Okay, so that's the technical part. People can do that. But the other part is really learning how to love yourself through it all. Through it all, because that fear is going to come, because now we're going into the unknown. Now you're letting go of the crutches and the excuses and you can't blame anybody else for your decisions anymore. And it's going to feel a bit intense, So I think the other part to this is learning how to accept where you are, practicing mindfulness and affirmations. I know people think affirmations are cheesy, but we think terrible things about ourselves every day. Those are still affirmations. They're just affirming the things that keep us stuck rather than affirming the things that move us forward. So you're really learning a new relationship with yourself and a new relationship with your goals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. No, for sure. And that self-love seems really important because you need that core so strong, because in any change, I mean, even if it's for the better, and even if it's going after what you want, there's some loss, whatever you're leaving behind, even if it's something you didn't want, right? There is a letting go of that. And, it could be more extreme, right? Where people let go of relationships and other people in their life who don't agree with the choices they're making and things like that.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Your world does shift when you start to own your truth and validate yourself a little bit more. Everything changes. And again, some things can be for the worse, and you define what that means. Some things can be for the best, but some people may let go of you once you start loving yourself a little bit more and becoming more in alignment, and these are real things. So I definitely want to validate here, if anybody needs to hear this, that the things that you might be afraid of experiencing may absolutely be real things, real pain, real loss that might come along with making the shift to be more in alignment and get unstuck. It's real. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be really comforting to hear, because you're not crazy.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
To drop that in there. But you're not crazy for these intense feelings that you feel about what's to come after you really shake up the dynamics of your life, because other people and things are attached to that. There is inherently going to be a letting go of something. That's what we are intentionally doing. We're letting go of our focuses on this particular version of ourselves, particular mindsets, relationships, and we're trying to create different kinds. So you have to be willing and ready to let go of something. That can be paralyzing sometimes, though. You asked too, what are some tools? What are some ways people can go into their minds and try to shake something up a bit? I always like to ask people, what is the worst case scenario? Our brains are comfortable going to the worst case scenario. So let's just go that path of least resistance here. And I have people describe what's the absolute worst that can happen. And usually when we, have that conversation, either we realize that we are catastrophizing. We're like, oh, life is going to be over. And actually, no, it's just going to be really uncomfortable. Then we can open up and talk about, well, how do you handle discomfort? Is the way that you're coping with transition and difficult times healthy? Let's learn how to be healthy through those things. And then the worst case scenario doesn't look so bad after we really examine what our fears has created as the possible outcome.
Right. Both because what you're afraid of happening may not be as big, and also that you have the sort of the confidence to know that you can navigate it, even if hard things do happen. Yeah, that's a good point. So you come up with a fear, whatever that
Mhm.
is in your particular situation. Like, oh God, I'm terrified this is going to happen, and my life will be a mess or ruined or something. How do you make it, you know, feel manageable, or feel, and not just feel manageable, but also, feel worth it? Because I feel like in some of what I do with people is making bigger, like amplifying what the positive benefits could be on the other side. Right.
Yeah.
So, the fear voice, the negative benefits gets a little smaller. It's the carrot on the stick to give people something to remember. Here's the end goal. There's something that I really value there that keeps you going. What would you do to give them that bravery or that courage to keep moving towards what is really right for them?
It's kind of something that I do with my clients all the time. And sometimes it's really difficult because our brains are so strong. Break things down into doable pieces and start small. Start small. If you're not ready to, switch careers just yet, right? Or you're not ready to have that difficult conversation with your partner or your family member or friend just yet. Start small by setting goals in your day and completing those tasks. It can be completely unrelated to what it is that this ultimate change you want to make. But what this does is it gives you more confidence. It builds your trust in yourself. If you get a little bit more organized in your day, best you can, because I'm not the guru at that. But once you start to see that you can create a goal or a task and you can do what you need to do, get the resources you need to complete it, whether it be turning something in on time or get into a meeting on time, or whatever the case is, best you can, you start to feel a little bit better about yourself. Um, that's a small step towards, okay, now let me kind of turn the ante up on the particular goals that I'm setting. Maybe now I can make one step towards my bigger goal of maybe I can start looking for jobs, or maybe I can start writing out what it is that I want to say. And then the next, you know what I'm saying? And so don't be afraid to start off small, because this kind of can be intense and you want to bring that compassion to yourself.
So you feel like those little steps like that can translate, like, so that confidence you might feel, okay, I got this done, I got that done, I'm, look at me, I'm on top of it. You feel that you can make the sort of the leap from that to a confidence about your emotional ability to navigate things, or your ability to navigate emotional things, right? Because that's different, very different than like, oh, I, called the electricity company, yay me. Like I got that done today, which is pretty awful to do actually. So I don't want to minimize that. But it is a different kind of step, right? Of activity. So going from that to, oh, I have the strength to have this difficult conversation or move on with my
Well,
life in some way.
yeah, I think that there is, that's why I say gradual steps, because what we're building there is just you are creating anchor points for you to move towards. If you're feeling stuck and you're not doing anything, or the things you're doing is not effectively moving you forward or helping you accomplish things, then that's a part of you that you just haven't practiced yet. So practicing being that version that accomplishes things, that sets a goal, that moves towards it, does help you practice problem solving skills, being resourceful and things like that, to get you to the point of then now creating goals around this bigger issue there. Okay. So now I'm training myself to get things done. Now I'm meeting myself at the bigger things. Now, when we come to the strength of processing through things. I think that takes a different kind of route because, I don't think, even though being on hold for 45 minutes with the electric company is a lot,
Yeah, that is an existential crisis all of its own.
But yeah, it does require a couple of other skills when we're going a little bit deeper into those things that we're trying to do to move forward. But that baseline of that confidence, that learning how to pull yourself forward is absolutely a skill necessary foundation.
Yeah. So what you're talking about sounds to me like for people who are sort of like at the beginning of this process, maybe of starting to explore something isn't right. What do I do? How do I get out of this? Why am I unhappy or something? For people, I talk to them, I'm sure you talk to a lot of them, who really know what the source is of their unhappiness, who even have, may have a very clear vision of what could make them happier. And they know what they need to do to get from where they are to what life could be. And I mean, this can go on for years, right?
Yeah. Lifetime.
The lifetime, right, which is so sad because don't we all deserve to live that best vision and live a life that's in alignment and not sort of settle for an emptiness and cutting off parts of yourself and your needs and desires and all of that. So yeah, what would be the approach you might take with somebody where it's a chronic stuckness, right? Like it's been there for a long time.
Well, one, as a mental health advocate, of course, I would ask if there is some underlying mental health things going on, which comes a part of analyzing self and seeing what's going on there, because I don't want to minimize someone who may be suffering from depression or some other things that might be going on that literally taps and zaps those parts that they need to be able to take the next step. So had to say that.
Yes, of course. That's a very good point.
The other part, though, is now I have to be direct. And now we're talking self accountability. And I ask, why do you feel like you deserve the life that you're living? Well, I don't feel that way. Okay. Well, if you don't feel that way, if you don't feel like you deserve what it is you're experiencing or that, you're involved in, then why are you involving yourself in it? And why are you having it as a part of your life? Then usually here comes the excuses. Here comes, now I'm protecting myself from the fear of the unknown. Should I choose something else? And then we have to explore that. Why don't you trust yourself enough to figure out how to navigate the unknown? Every day is the unknown, unless, of course, you protect things that are going to give you a particular outcome, regardless if it's good or miserable. And you're creating this life just because it's familiar, just because you have confidence in navigating it. So I'd like to challenge people. Why are you protecting a life that is not serving you so tightly? What's that? Is it because you think you're supposed to? Your family wouldn't approve if you did something different? What is that there? And that typically opens things up a lot if people just kind of sit there and ask themselves that.
That is such a great question. Yeah, that really is the heart. I mean, that is the heart of it, because if you're not changing something, there is a piece of you that is accepting it as this is what you deserve, or this is all that can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be, I've asked that question and I've seen people like have the stuck face and they're just like, no, it couldn't be. You mean it's me all along? Now, this isn't to minimize what other people, the impacts that other people can have in your life, right? So I definitely want to be mindful of that. However, I just don't think people believe in their own power. You have the power to create the kind of life that you want to live.
Right.
And you have to realize how you're using that power.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and of course, like to what you said, that of course other people have an impact. So somebody could be treating you badly or or there's a dynamic that just doesn't work for whatever reason. But then, yeah, it's on you to walk away. No, I'm not here for this. And that's the self-accountability part that you're talking about. Yeah.
And scary part. I get it. It's not easy work here, definitely have to pace yourself, but we have to own our power. Either way, when we are actively making decisions to invite something or to sustain something in our lives, that's us exerting our power. We have that choice to say, you get to be a part of my life. Then we turn around and say, but I hate it. How does that look when you put it out on the table? I hate these beans, but I'm going to eat them anyways. Why do we feel like we deserve that?
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, it's so simple. It's like so simple, but there's something about the way you say it. It's like so powerful. It's so clear. That really is the heart of it. And not making a choice is also a choice.
Absolutely.
Right.
In so many ways. And that can work for you and that can work against you. Right. I'm not making a choice to kind of honor this old narrative that I had of myself, that I didn't deserve better or I didn't deserve great things. I'm not going to make a choice that honors that, or I'm not going to make a choice to move forward because I don't want to shake anything up. That makes a big impact as well. And a lot of times when I ask people to, even if they don't believe it, tell me why you're powerful. Tell me your strengths. Tell me how powerful you are. I'll ask people that who I don't feel like they really actually believe that they're powerful, to put them in a position to challenge their mindset and the narrative that they have of themselves. So now they have to step outside of, I am not powerful, and identify in what ways are you in control and what ways are you powerful. It's really hard to tell yourself that you're not in control when you've just listed, I forced you to list ways that you're powerful. I've created some cognitive dissonance there. You can't say, well, I'm powerful because I made these decisions, and then go back to a narrative that says you can't change anything about what's happening in your life.
Yes. Yes.
So discomfort, we're afraid of discomfort, but discomfort is exactly what we need in order to get unstuck. So do you want to be uncomfortable in a way that keeps you stuck, or do you want to be uncomfortable in a way that actually moves you forward? That choice is yours every single day.
Yeah. And it's a choice between potentially being uncomfortable forever, right? Or being uncomfortable temporarily to then get to a comfortable place, which I think is when you say the what is it? The soft life, the hard
yes, the hard work for the soft life. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that trend of like, I want a soft life. And, like I've seen the videos on Instagram where it's like some woman and she's surrounded in flowers and the sun's hitting her. It's like, I've got the soft life. And it looks so peaceful. And I'm like, that is absolutely a real thing that can happen. But you know what that person probably had to do? They had to face their fears of walking away from those toxic relationships. They had to stop overworking to the point where they were too burnt out for their family or the people that loved them. They had to create time for themselves to be able to sit there and sip that tea. And, they had to budget to be able to afford that trip. There's a lot of those icky things that cause so much stress that we tend to put them on the back burner just so we can survive day to day. And I have to say this, the past 3 years, the world is completely changed in so many ways. And that word lazy, I've been hearing a lot. Oh, well, I've gotten lazy. No, your mind is just trying to do the best that it can.
Right.
And process, things the best that it can so that it can bring you to the next day. I don't believe in lazy. I don't think that people who are stuck are lazy. There is something there that is so overwhelming that they haven't figured out yet, or maybe they do know, that is holding them back. Either I don't know how to do it, I've messed up so many times before, so I'm just over trying. Tons of things could be there. So I think that it really is important, though, to definitely pace yourself when you're trying to embark on change, because if you have an overwhelming task or you have tons of things that are actually necessary for this change that you want, if you try to take on all that stuff at once, you're going to put yourself in a chokehold. You want this soft life, you've got to be kind to yourself throughout the process too. Break it down. So back to your point of the hard work for the soft life. Yes, those tasks, that task list, those things that are intimidating, they have to be done. But you've got to be organized and strategic on how you're approaching those things. Otherwise, you don't get to sip tea on the side of the mountain talking about how soft your life is.
Right. That's the surface level of a soft life. I would sort of translate that into a peaceful joy in your heart and soul, right? Like that's the goal. If I were to think about a soft life, I would think of it that way. There's hard work to get to that place. And
Yeah.
it's not going to happen by avoiding fears, and it's not going to happen by some kind of toxic positivity. It's going to require some digging in.
Absolutely. And the more that we avoid fear, the less we know how to handle it. We're supposed to feel fear. That's just like feeling happiness, feeling, joyful, whatever the case is. Fear is a natural emotion. It helps us survive. That's how you know to run away from a bear that's coming towards you. But sometimes when that muscle isn't exercised, that resilience isn't exercised, it makes sense that we're a bit afraid to feel fear because we don't know how we're going to handle it. So I encourage people to invite fear closer, because quite often fear highlights what you desire.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights what you desire, and you can create goals through your fears. If I'm fearful of losing the relationships around me, that highlights how much I actually value connections, intimacy, and having a support system around me. Okay, but that has to be healthy. So it might not be the people that you're around, but it does sound like a goal in which you can open yourself up to bring people who align with that into your life. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I do know what you're saying. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, fears are like the key, actually. We're running away from the very thing that can give us a glimpse deeper into ourselves that can help us get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
It really does create magic.
How do we sit with it? Because that fear comes up, right? And as you were saying before, like we're averse to discomfort in general. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. It's not fun. Doesn't feel good. And we may not always be able to sort of hold both things at the same time. Like, okay, I have to have this discomfort for the longer term goal, the short term discomfort for the long term goal. So instead we may just reactively like, oh, discomfort. No, not doing this. So, when that comes up, the discomfort, the fear, those feelings, what do you recommend, or what would you do with somebody to help them sit with that and not run away, to let it stay, to explore it, to be curious about it, to digest it, and to know that they can navigate it ultimately?
Yeah, that's a great question. Specifically because fear and those emotions paired with it can be very physical, right? Our hearts can start racing, our hands, palms sweaty. Sometimes we can even get like somatic symptoms like stomach aches and all that other good stuff. What I'm going to say may sound counterintuitive or just is odd, but practicing discipline and learning how to feel that feeling effectively without making a decision based off of it. So what I'm talking about is mindfulness. And I'm going to sound so much like a therapist right now, but um, practicing some physical activity like yoga that paces you through sensations that are uncomfortable in a safe way, that teaches you breathing techniques, because you're going to need to be able to kind of breathe through and be more in tune with your body and how it actually feels. What that does in our brains is it's allowing for you to tell your brain that you're safe, even though your body is having this very extreme, uncomfortable reaction to your thoughts. When you're able to practice that, like, I'm safe, I'm okay, it's all right. Now let me tune into what my brain is doing. Then we've got the magic happening there. Then you can go and sit down and just write out and journal what's in my head right now. There's no right or wrong way to journal. You can write words all over the paper. You can, try to find a song that matches how you're feeling and let that inspire you, right? But it's about slowing down, coming in tune with what the feeling feels like, and pairing it with an activity or a thought that you are safe. Because fear hurls us into fight or flight. And quite often people are stuck because they're stuck inside of a fight or flight response. That fear that was programmed into our ancestors that had to fight bears and lions and stuff to eat, that still trickles down. We don't have to do that anymore for the most part, but our body still responds to fear just as if we are actively in danger.
Right.
It doesn't care if it's just, it's fearing going and speak in front of a meeting or fighting off a bear. Same reaction.
Well, and unfortunately, so many of us, like, we don't even have to go back to our ancestors. It's like our childhoods taught us that response, or
Absolutely.
whatever experiences we've had. So it's
Absolutely.
it's very present, right, for so many people, and easy to trigger that fear.
Yes, but practice pausing. Pause. Once you feel that fear, don't make any decisions when that feeling is in your body. Slow down. And then when you get yourself back to a calm state, be it through any of the things that I've said or any other way that you know how to bring your heart rate back, then you can kind of take the information that was brought in your mind during that feeling and process it.
Okay, so revisit it then in that state, see if you have new information or a new perspective, or some feeling of movement, that some inertia has been broken or something.
Absolutely. Because sometimes it's hard to think, I can sit here and say, well, when you're feeling the fear, do all these wonderful, amazing things, when what's biologically happening is your prefrontal cortex is shutting down and you don't have your executive functions anymore. And then once you're through it, then do the processing. That may be helpful for some people. Fear is that intense.
And what if it's something that's with you like all the time, because a lot of us ruminate, right?
Yeah.
Especially when faced with a decision or
Mhm.
something that we know has to shift. And it may not even be an acute fear. I mean, maybe it is when we stop to think about it, but it's just sort of this like ongoing
like this
thing,
long.
like poking at us all the time. I mean, I think we get used to that too.
Mhm.
Like that becomes normal for a lot of people, just to feel like that. And that becomes a whole way of life. Being in a situation you don't want to be in, or that doesn't feel right to you, but also the kind of constant conversation you're having with yourself, and the feeling unhappy, and that sort of becomes what feels normal.
Yeah, it's not even like a thing that you can even identify or pinpoint almost, because it's just embedded in the way that you understand things. That's when I think that it's important to question the emotion. Then, like, why am I afraid?
Mm.
Why? Because we're having to dissolve this mindset, and you might have some very real things, like you said, there might be some things that you've experienced in childhood or in your life that validly, supports why this is a fear for you. But once you get down to the why, then you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do about it now?
Mm-hmm.
You've created that awareness that I understand why this is here, and you ask that question of what am I going to do about it now? You've created a break in that loop. Now you're recognizing that you actually do have the power to do something about it now. And it's going to be really uncomfortable to say, I'm not going to do anything, because now you are recognizing that you're given this nothingness or the stagnation or whatever it is that you're experiencing permission to stay. Now it doesn't always happen as clean cut as that. And again, I want to mention that sometimes it could be diagnosable anxiety or something like that. So I don't want to oversimplify this process. But I do think that it does make a big difference to really understand why that is the mindset in the first place. That can provide a lot of clarity.
So if somebody's ready to make a change,
Mm-hmm.
let's go like take a little step further
Okay.
down this path. So they're ready to make this change and they know what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
They've done all these little steps to feel stronger. And then it's just kind of that last push, right? Because as much as there's like little steps to change, it's always that final step that is always going to be a leap, right? Even if you've just taken all the incremental as close as you can get, but that last piece of it is always like boom, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard. So how would you prepare for that last big step, which, in some ways you can't really prepare for? I mean, so maybe I'm asking you a really unfair question here because it's into the unknown. And so yeah, you can't, but if you could, what would you say?
Yeah, what I would say to those who are trying to figure out how to prepare for that leap of faith is this is actually something I can't answer because what's required is trust. You have to trust yourself. If you have done all the things that you needed to do, you understand your why, you've got the next steps, you've got your resources. What else do you need? It's time to break out of the patterns and peek into the unknown. And the trust comes in knowing that you did everything that you could to propel yourself forward. There could be anything on the other side. Now, this is the raw truth. You could fall flat on your face. You could fall flat on your face. You could not be well received by others and all those things we talked about in the beginning. But something's going to come from that. You're in this space, but you recognize that you have a choice. You understand that there's things that you can do to get unstuck. You might have even set yourself up to have supportive resources and things like that in the event that things didn't go the way that you needed them to. So it's a win-win situation. Even if you fall flat on your face, you're going to find something there. You're going to develop in some kind of way that's going to allow for you to handle challenges and setbacks better than you did the first time, the second time, hopefully not the third time, but you get
right.
So it's about, releasing this expectation that it has to be perfect now. I did everything. Now the next thing that I do, I have to get everything now. And
right. While being open to that, it might there could be all sorts of beauty on the other side, right? That's what you're aiming for. And, I think living your truest self, you're really in yourself, in the truest version of who you are.
Yeah.
That counts for a lot.
For a lot.
How you move through the world and just how you feel on a daily basis, even if everything isn't perfect in your life, which it will never be, but better it's not perfect and you're living your truth than it's not perfect and you're wearing a mask or suppressing huge chunks of who you are or whatever it requires to stay where you are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And think about it this way. There is an art to quote unquote failure. I don't believe that failure exists until effort stops, But if we're going to go with the idea of failure, there's a way to fail. And the way that we fail in a way that is ineffective is when things don't work out or we're just misaligned with things in our lives, we tend to internalize it and take that as a sign that we don't deserve to be happy. And that is the most ineffective way to experience a setback or a failure. The most effective way, with something that requires this art, which requires a lot of what we're talking about, is to feel your feelings. Yes, it sucks. You didn't get what you want. It didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to. Okay. But now what? Those are circumstances that didn't pan out. But now what? Does that mean that we give up on the happiness and the goal and the dream? We get to make definition over what that means. And we have to make sure that it isn't one that shuts us down or invalidates our dreams, our right to be happy and healthy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've found, I mean, personally, when I've made some really tough choices, which I have, what it gave me was hope. When you're stuck, you don't have hope. You're just like, oh, this is okay. This is what my life is going to be. Right. Like, oh God, and you make hard choices and there may be uncertainty, but you have hope. There's relief from having made the decision, I found, but also hope, like, okay, now I have that chance. I have a chance to have that life that I wanted, and that, gosh, that makes such a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like that was almost like an instantaneous feeling of like going from, just kind of resigned. To, okay, like, now what can I make happen now? Or what can I bring into my life now? And, how can I, as you said, it's taking power back.
Absolutely.
Right? Rather than just sort of throwing your hands up in the air and being like, oh, well, I guess, yeah. And I mean, this is the one life like this that we're going to have. So shouldn't we try to make it work?
Yeah, because why not? That's the biggest question here. Why not? But yeah, I think something really important that you're talking about is you kind of see yourself more after these tougher decisions. You're like, wow, that was tough. I felt all those emotions. I felt that fear, the grief, the sadness, or excitement, whatever the case is. And now I'm on the other side of that decision and I still have all my fingers. I still have my legs. I'm still, I still have, me.
Yes. Well, and more of you. I mean, not even just that you're intact, you have reclaimed so much of yourself. You're like, oh, I'm back, baby. Like, oh, there I am. Oh, I remember her. It was like that.
Yeah. And I always like to keep it real. There might be times where you make a really hard decision and you question the heck out of it because there is a process of transition and a decomposition of things to make space for this newer life you're trying to create. So I want to really highlight that is absolutely a part of some of these bigger decisions. And it doesn't mean you're in the wrong space. You can't overlap the new life onto the old one. Something has to fall apart, and grief is a part of that sometimes. That's okay. It's actually necessary for you to recognize what you're letting go of and what you need to kind of react or respond to. But what you have to react or respond to actively release it out of your energy. They can't be a part of your story anymore. So I always like to highlight both sides.
It's true. And there can be space for both at the same time, because yes, even in those moments when I made my choices and felt a new hope and a new peace and all of that, it didn't mean that everything was easy and perfect. There were hard things too, certainly. So I think, I'm really glad that you said that, because it is so, it's easy to hit that point where it's hard and you go, oh God, I made a mistake. Like, what am I doing? And then you just go back to your old patterns, or, you scramble, right, to crawl back under that rock, or, whatever it is, because it's hard. But I think it's a really good point that it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong place, and it's just a natural part of the process.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things, I was on a YouTube binge. I don't know if anybody else, well, I know other people do this. It just went down the YouTube rabbit hole. Yes. And somehow I ended up on a video about butterflies and how they transition, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, we know this. They crawl, the caterpillar crawls into its cocoon. It's called something else, but they crawl into their
chrysalis.
Cocoon. Yeah.
Chrysalis, yeah. I was an elementary school teacher, so I knew all that stuff. Yeah.
And then this process happens, and then they come out beautiful and they fly off, right? But this was like a scientific video about what actually happens during this transformation. And I sometimes tell this to some of my clients because, as you know, they have to find a spot, they have to take their little legs and use what they got and create this space for transformation for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do with little arms. but, but they do this, and when they go inside of this space where it's just them raw,
Mm-hmm.
completely come undone. Warning, may turn some stomachs, but they melt, they disintegrate into something you wouldn't be able to recognize. And I compare this to our transformation sometimes when we're making those hard leaps. It's a journey. There are parts to it. You have to pace yourself. And when you create that space, you start to get rid of all the things, you're taking control of your environment. There's something magical that will happen that can be very painful, which is the letting go of that old identity that somehow convinced you deserved to not be fulfilled. And transform into this newer version of yourself that is more open and welcoming and is more expansive in its perception. We can't skip that process. And there's nothing that I could say, nothing that you could really say to soften that process. It's just about trusting yourself and understanding that for anybody who is making these changes in their lives, they're going through the same kind of transition. The social media, oh my God, social media can paint this very warped idea of what growth looks like, self-love, self-care, making hard decisions. It's not just waking up, making a cool mushroom coffee and journaling. That's not it. The crying, the feeling lost, the questioning yourself, and that's all a part of it, because you get to answer it. You get to learn how to soothe yourself. You get to learn how to be more resilient and create space for difficult emotions. That's what happens in this process, and you come out anew. So that's something I definitely wanted to share, to just normalize what it is that you're trying to advocate for right now.
Yes. What we think of as self-care. I mean, self-care may require difficult, uncomfortable decisions. It isn't always, like, oh, spa day or whatever. To really, truly, deeply care for yourself, it may not always feel like the way we want it to feel. Yeah.
Do you think it's fair to maybe to have people ask themselves that if I'm stuck, in what ways might I not be loving myself, or not taking care of myself, or honoring something about myself? Because, as like, to your point, self-care quite often, more than a spa day, quite often, requires those tough decisions and that discipline and all of those things. So I'm wondering, what your point of view is on, if you're feeling stuck, maybe asking yourself, what parts of myself might I not be paying most attention to right now or caring about right now?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the times it's really is about not playing the long game. It's that short term, I'm going to avoid pain, or I'm going to keep my, certain things easy or familiar or whatever. And that feels like, you think you're protecting yourself. You think you're taking care of yourself, but you're really not. So I think it's about really not giving your deepest needs and desires in your core self that love, and not honoring it, which may require, or almost certainly requires, playing the long game a little more, and foregoing the immediate sort of comfort, even when it's an unhappy comfort.
Yeah, I like that. It sounds like, my stuckness might be a coping skill, unconsciously, because if I choose to honor those other parts of myself or practice that self-love, it's going to require some delayed gratification and some investment in those tough feelings. Yeah, I like that perspective of just kind of pairing. If you want to get unstuck, just try to figure out how you can love yourself and honor yourself a bit more and see where that leads you first. You might start to see the parts of yourself that you're ignoring that need to be heard because they've got the information on what the next step is to take.
Right. Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
saw something you posted once that you can't heal. I'm going to completely butcher what you said. So I apologize in advance, but it was something about how you can't heal when you're keeping yourself in the situations around the people, whatever, who are causing your pain. I don't know. You can tell me if I'm even close at all, but it was something to that effect.
It's hard to heal when you're in the fire is how I usually say it. You know, we're trying to heal burn wounds while we're still burning. Logically, how do you go and do self-love and you get everything all put together, but you have a group of friends that do not believe in you, they sabotage you, they plant seeds of self-doubt, or you don't feel safe in your home sharing your dreams or your goals, but you need that in order to move forward. And you know, there's tons of different situations that I can go down the list when people are trying to move forward and get themselves out there, but their environment is causing them to have to tap into a version of themselves that is not attuned into this newer visualization that they have for their lives.
There's a role they're expected to play.
Yeah, and we subconsciously tap right into that role so that we can survive, so that we can get through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people cope by trying to do those more superficial self-care kind of things, which really can be just escapism. So it's like, oh, I'll go do this for myself. And maybe you feel good while you're doing whatever you're doing, but you're still going back to the life you're living. Right. And so those things are not really, they're not going to shift anything. I mean, look, I like to put TV on at night and shut my brain off. That's nice sometimes. But those things they don't move you forward in your life and in your process and your journey and becoming who you want to be or having the kind of life you want.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the coping actions like the maybe going shopping or spa day. I know that's what we're referring to, which spa days are cool. All that stuff is cool. But we're not changing the themes of our lives. We can do those actions, but we still return to a theme. Mm-hmm. The theme of relationships, the theme of self-concept, which is so huge here. That is still there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we got to do what we got to do to get from day to day. By all means, do your things that make you feel great, make your bed when you first wake up, all that good stuff, whatever works for you. But what are the themes that you're experiencing? And do those resonate with you? Do those make you feel good the same way that buying that thing or watching that game or whatever distractions that you have provide to you? Mm-hmm. That's the meat and potatoes of it.
And you're talking about the themes, like the bigger themes, like who you are in the world or your connections and those kinds of things.
Absolutely. The life that you have set up, the circumstances that feed you your experiences. If those are still the same, then we have to make sure that we are not getting too distracted in the small things that brings us endorphins and all that good stuff.
Right.
Because you may not have to do that in order to feel that good if you pay attention to these circumstances and themes that lie underneath the surface.
Right. Well, I think there's a distinction between taking a break, right? Mm-hmm. Which we all need. Like no matter, you could have the healthiest, happiest life and, you still need a break sometime. Like we all have to take breaks. But there's an important distinction between taking a break from normal everyday life and living a life you need to escape from.
Absolutely.
Right. Like that's an important distinction I think sometimes people miss. Yeah.
And how do you tell the difference between the two, right? The productive distractions and the unproductive distractions. The productive distractions are complementing the way that you already feel in your life. It's just adding on. You're giving yourself that space and that love to help you live the life and support the dreams that you've put into place. And then we have the unproductive distractions. Sometimes those unproductive distractions kind of add more drama or more sadness or more pain. And sometimes they make us feel good, but they're pulling us away from what's truly important to us. If we're living a life we don't want to live in aspects of like our satisfaction with our job or our relationships, if that thing is pulling you away from the fact that you don't have a job that you like, or that you don't have a relationship that you feel comfortable or safe in, then we have to say, all right, hold on now. Let's see what we're doing here.
Well, it's a way to not have to address it, right?
Yeah.
You're checking out, I think, if that's what you're saying. Yeah. So as we finish up here, if you were going to tell people one last thing about self-accountability in creating change in their lives, what do you think is the most important thing they should come away with today?
Okay. I'll say that, ironically, we're supposed to get stuck. We're supposed to get stuck sometimes, because that is the indicator that something needs to change, that we need a better alignment. We might be growing, we might be expanding, so we need more or different. So try not to label or judge being stuck. Just understand it as a signal to now tap into your power and figure out how you need to adjust what you're experiencing to align with what's inside.
Mm-hmm.
And as it pertains to self-accountability, understanding that no one else can do this for you except for you. This has to become an inside job. And if we start looking outside of ourselves for other people to tell us what we should be doing, what's best for us, there's bound to be some misalignment. So one, stuckness is supposed to happen. It actually helps us evolve. It's there to help us evolve.
Mm-hmm.
The accountability piece is to use it for such. When you are stuck, that is the time for you to hold yourself accountable, own your power, and start to create what the next version of yourself or the next circumstances are going to look like.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that, because I love both of those and how they come together, because it really speaks to knowing yourself. And part of that is knowing that you are changing, right?
Yeah.
So what was true for you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a month ago, last week, this morning may not be true for you now. So the more you really get in touch and know yourself, then you can know what's right for you, and you have a better chance of taking those steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Evolution is going to happen. You just got to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved this conversation.
I'm glad you invited me here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my Instagram. It's at Dr. Stafford _. And I am posting mental health tips and encouraging words on there. And I'm also making reels and videos on topics very similar to what you and I have talked about here today. And yeah, I interact with the audience. So if someone wants to leave a comment or shoot a message, I absolutely would love to talk to them.
Great. I love your content. So yes, I recommend everybody go check it out.
Thank you.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. And I look forward to more conversations with you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Great. Take care. Thank you for listening and being part of the conversation. Please find a way to validate yourself today. Maybe find a way to validate someone else too. And if you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also join me at No Not Crazy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's build this community of validation together.